Look, let's get to the markets and to the Senate. The Senate failed to pass dueling bills yesterday aimed at ending the partial government shutdown. Now, in its 35th day, the president is calling now for a down payment as well as part of a deal. Airlines are feeling the strain. JetBlue CEO said, quote, "We are close to a tipping point in air travel." Let's get the panel's reaction first, and then I got to see what you think about all of this. Heather Higgins, your reaction.
Well, the first thing I think that people are missing about the shutdown is that the longer it goes on, the more many people are aware of how non-essential a lot of these non-essential workers actually are. The reality is that most people aren't affected by it. The media is driving the story about the 800,000 employees plus the contractors, et cetera. And this has been a failure of messaging on the Trump administration's part because they haven't been able to break through that this is really about getting the border security that people who are border security specialists say they need, not a coast-to-coast wall, but in strategic places. So that is the first thing. You're not seeing that much sympathy among the average American because if you look at the data, the average government workers' compensation is significantly more and arguably up to roughly twice what it is for the average American worker. So, you know, they understand that this is hard times, but this is not the same as losing your job or feeling like you're at risk or something is seriously wrong in your community with opioids and everything else. So there's a political dynamic here that the media isn't quite capturing, which is why I think you're seeing increased support for the wall despite the drumbeat that you're getting all the time.
But it definitely is politics. I feel like they're trying to, well, I don't know that they're trying to come together, but from the war of words, it sounds like maybe they're coming together.
It sounds like maybe they're moving just a bit toward each other tentatively. I mean, you had a few people cross the aisle yesterday. You had, according to reports, you had kind of a somewhat heated Senate Republican lunch where there was some sharp words exchanged. The president's clearly moved a bit in terms of his compromise and talked about willing to have a 3-week temporary bill while they negotiate. There's pressure on the Democratic side as this goes on as well. So who knows when it will end, but the politics is moving things a bit here, clearly.
The lead story, obviously, Dagan's bringing up the unwind. Let's talk about this in terms of the Federal Reserve perhaps pulling back on selling the $50 billion. This is important.
This is a big deal. This is a big deal. It's been very interesting. You know, there's a lot of debate right here, as you've heard this week, about whether the Fed went a little too far late last year with their fourth increase and a little, you know, a lot of talk about Jay Powell where he was at. He's kind of been a little more nuanced in his language. They're going to be out next week. But I think there's a pretty strong sense here that the Fed is really in pause mode to sort of take a measure of the economy and that we probably won't see anything for 6 months is sort of the consensus view here. Which is interesting because I think at the same time, a lot of people feel, despite a certain gloomy mood here, that the U.S. economy is still doing well. Maybe it'll be a little bit slower. It's more, I think, what's the impact of China going to be? What's the impact of Europe going to be this year? So they definitely seem at the Fed to be very much in watch and wait mode right now.
And then, Dagan, there's the whole taxing the wealthy issue. Presidential candidate Senator Elizabeth Warren proposing this annual 2% tax on household wealth above $50 million and an additional 1% tax on wealth above $1 billion. White House National Economic Council Director Larry Kudlow is responding to the proposal. He was on Lou Dobbs Tonight last night.
Let's tax all the rich people. Let's confiscate all the wealth people earn. Let's destroy private sector incentives and market-based reforms. So you know what happens? Everybody is equal. Nobody has any money. Nobody has any money except the dictator and a handful of generals. This stuff has been tried for all these 100 years. It never works and always makes the country poorer.
Dagan, your reaction first, then I got to hear what you have to say as we sit here in the Swiss Alps, Matt. Go ahead, Dagan.
Elizabeth Warren clearly is trying to trump Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has taken all the air out of the room in terms of left-wing liberals with her 70% tax on the highest earners. That's an income tax. Elizabeth Warren now even using the same language that AOC used, talking about the tippy tops, the tippy top of the income spectrum. This only works if all other countries do it as well, because this money in the United States will move somewhere else that it's welcome. And you can be doggone sure. Now, Elizabeth Warren is trying to put a penalty on people who turn in their U.S. citizenship. That's one of her ideas. So she wants to lock people in this country, if you will, which I think would be unconstitutional, among other things in this plan that are unconstitutional. But again, don't you think that Russia would say, hey, here's a Russian passport. Bring us your money. We'll tax it at 12%. Any other nation would do that and could do that.
Yeah, and every time we see proposals like this, Matt, we see efforts to evade the tax and try to move money, use the tax system as effectively as you could to not show that much income.
Yeah, a couple points. First, I think what you just said is very true, Maria. And we wrote a piece last weekend about what it was like in the United States for the wealthy during the years when tax rates were far higher, as high as 90%, which is really from the 30s to the 60s. And what happened is, rich entertainers like Jack Benny and Bing Crosby's just structured a lot of transactions and deals in different ways, used tax shelters. So undoubtedly what we would see, and we have to remember this with all of these debates, is there's a political element and there's the reality element. And the reality element is rich people are going to do everything they can, broadly speaking, to make their taxes reduced, and the government's going to try to get as much as they can, and it's a bit of a cat and mouse game. So the game would have evolved very dramatically there. Two other points. I think one point is, look, we've talked about it on the show before when I was on with you before. The momentum in the Democratic Party is to the left, and policies and candidates are going to be moving to the left for a while. So we're going to have 2 years of this kind of stuff because that's where the energy is. Yeah. Secondly, I think, look, when you're at Davos, and you know what it's like, people feel very removed from that debate in the United States, and they tend to not necessarily feel what a lot of average voters feel, whether you think those proposals are reasonable or not. So it becomes a bit of a joke, but it's a real thing.
Yeah, Matt, it's good to have you.
Good to be here.
Thanks so much, Matt Murray. We love the Wall Street Journal joining us this morning.